Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Open Source Workplace Weekly podcast, where I'm your host, Steve Todd, Global Head of Workplace at NASDAQ and the founder of OpenSourceWorkplace.com. Each week, we talk with industry experts and thought leaders on trending topics all around workplace. Today's no different. So, what are we going to talk about today? Let's pull up today's agenda. Today, we're going to talk with Luc Kamperman. Luc's a good friend of the show, good friend of mine, someone I confide in, I speak with regularly, whose opinion I value. He's a managing partner of Veldhoen. And what we're going to talk about is people, we often talk about workplace strategy. There's a lot of narrative in the media about people, place, but very little about process. The process by which people do things, how organizations manage flows of information and communication. And we're going to touch about that today. We're going to look at existing, how organizations maybe are doing it today, how they did it pre-pandemic, but then also what are the new ways? How does this need to change in the new ways of working? So that's what we're going to discuss today with Luc Kamperman. So Luc, welcome, come on in, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Steve. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you. It's been a little while. And how have you been? How's the family been? As we were sort of talking a little bit before we got on camera, I live alone, and winter during a pandemic has been tough. But obviously, you have a family, young kids. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's indeed an interesting one. I can tell this week. On Sunday we went to. I live in Brooklyn. We went to Prospect Park, and I was like, okay, spring is coming. It felt a little bit like, we can start breathing again. Today, my wife and the girls. It's not even that warm, right? But they go to the beach. They just wanna. They want to get out. They want to definitely enjoy. Yeah, winter is always a bit challenging, and I felt indeed the past 6 weeks, January, February, they were pretty tough. So I'm happy to see that the blue skies and the temperatures rising. That helps a lot.
100%. It's kind of funny. I've taken the last 2 days off, look, and off work, and I couldn't have taken two better days in the New York area. The weather's been beautiful. It's been so good. So yeah, so it makes such a difference in how we feel and that as well. So I'm glad you're doing well. So look, obviously I know you well. You've been on the show, but those who don't know you, what really should they know about Luc Kamperman?
Um, Well, I guess I'm very passionate already for 18 plus years about the future of work. And whereas maybe in the past, sometimes we had to push for that topic, to be on the agenda. The last 12 months, it just happened to be on every leadership agenda. But my background is in general business management, and I really enjoy the work that I do, helping organizations to, from a business and strategic perspective, but then to work with, HR, human capital on the one hand, IT, new technology, software, and then with real estate FM, and working with all those three often siloed parts of the business is a big joy. To make it really holistic and in the approach. And primarily, what I enjoy doing, Steve, is to find the real intent behind the change towards whatever that new way of working entails for an organization. Because I strongly believe that you can change systems, you can change the environment, and that has a profound impact. But if you don't have it with a collective intelligence and a very clear intent behind it, what you really want to get out of it, it might fall flat pretty soon. So to ignite that little fire and to find that for organizations and to make that story big, I guess that's the main part of my job.
And like, I'm going to try and keep this on point to what we have to say we're going to talk about. But the challenge with you and I, we know when we talk about this, we go off on so many tangents that we can sort of we sort of go off topic. So we'll try and do my best. But I just want to pull on that thread. So, you talk about just now that actually what you do is help organizations hit that target, right? How do you maneuver and manipulate the organization to hit those targets? So whenever companies come to you today and they say these are my target, what sort of things are they telling you right now?
Well, they tell me a lot of things, and then at the same time, I'm a bit not fully surprised. They don't really know what they're targeting, and that is the key thing. So, for example, what we have seen is a bit of a shift. Who's leading the future of work, and it has shifted from real estate FM holding workplace of the future towards HR or human capital. And I think in the past months, the last few months of 2020, they started working on building a vision, primarily, you know, getting some insight from the information, the data gathering, focus groups, and convincing the leadership teams that, hey, we really can do things differently now, right? That's what we're all experiencing. But then what? And so it's primarily how do you operationalize now what that future work really can be for the organization is where a lot of them are actually stuck at the moment because it's just a lot of different opinions, a lot of different viewpoints, but again there's not one shared intent of where they really want to drive it towards to. And so to give you an example is that I hear quite a lot about, client experience. I hear about employee experience. We all know, like, yeah, great. That's important topics. But then to really drill that down, like, what is that experience? And then, for example, to say in our vision for 2026, we want our people to have the same employee experience wherever and whenever they work. That's fantastic. What does that actually mean? And so to really get to the next levels and to validate some of those visionary principles is where they then get stuck. So I guess that's where at the moment we are doing most of the work. Like, okay, let's do some more data gathering, let's validate the vision. Because if you have a vision like that for 2026, but you start talking with the business, the people who are responsible for a line of service, for example, then we hear often like, yeah, I'm really behind that. So where will my 50 people sit?
Mm-hmm.
So then all of a sudden it's very, very flat, very one-dimensional again. So there's still a huge, long way to go to make that manifest. And I guess that leads a little bit to the topic of today as well. For example, work processes are such a critical part of that spectrum.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad that this is something that we kind of agreed and landed on to talk about because I think there is a lot of media coverage, be it negative, be it positive, on the people and the place side, right? And we don't need to go through those things. Excuse me. So process, yeah. So whenever you say work processes, because obviously this could often is said work processes or workplace processes. Do you see them as different?
No, I think in the end of the day, it's all about operational processes. So if you look at let's say the working culture of an organization, you can break them down in three elements. One is the very tangible artifacts, right? It's the things that we can see, that we can feel. It's the design of your office. It's the tools that we have. The second element is the structure. It's the systems. It's the processes that we have in place. Maybe not you can see and touch them all, but you can assess. What's there. And then the third element, which is what we call more the subsurface, is literally around this is how we do things around here. This is like when things really start to matter, when decisions have to be made, what is accepted, what is not accepted, what is important, what is not important. Then, the real driver comes through. And so if we talk about that second layer, the processes and systems that we have in place, they're all operational processes. Some support the primary processes, the so-called secondary processes, but it's all processes, right? To make our working lives effective and efficient. So I don't really see that there's a big difference. The only thing, I think there's an interesting element where you look at programs or initiatives. And sometimes that is seen as from freeze, unfreeze, refreeze, like it's a one-off transformation. And I think the opportunity for organizations is to now really adopt a change mindset into those daily operations. So to indeed, we've been talking even pre-pandemic a lot about agile, but how can you indeed start to morph that into the daily operations that are happening? And so when you wrote me about the topic for today, I was like, yeah, you can't change your way of working without changing some of your work processes. That's almost like, the same thing where we have been discussing a lot, like with workplace culture. You can't go to a new way of working with the same attitude and with the same expectations. So, and the same is for work processes. There's so often that I see, okay, there's a new vision, there's a new way of working, it's going to be more mobile and flexible. And then, but we as a department have all these special requirements. And these special requirements are often, if you drill down on it, it's like it sits in work processes. And then it's like, yeah, but this is how we do things, this is how we work. And if you are not willing to look at those processes and what you can change about it, then that's what people hold on to, often to not change. And a very simple example: I need to have a signature in ink from this or this person. So no, we have to be all in the office. Now, it sounds a bit like a silly example. Nowadays, you would wonder, does that still need to be? But yeah, quite often it is. So how can you change, some of those processes into a digital process? And I know that organizations started to work on it, but again, we are finding now in the pandemic as well. I've been working with some tax departments, and they said, like, no, we need to have access to printers. We need to have, things on paper. We have to, but we all had to do it remotely now. There was no choice. And yeah, that took a little bit longer, but now, several months in, the realization is like, hey, we changed some of our processes, and so we can do this differently in the future. So I would always highly recommend, when you look at it in an integrated way, have an agile coach on the team, have a business process redesign expert on the team, that really can help when you start to engage with the businesses, because you will find quickly where they come up with things that they feel like they're hitting a wall, and that sits then in processes.
And who do you think owns that processes element within organizations? Because it's very easy to see there's the people stream, there's the technology stream, there's a real estate stream. Does that have to come down to each individual business nominating someone to actually run through their entire processes and almost rewrite to fit the new ways or new mode of working?
Yeah, that's I would say it depends. You know, the and why I say depends, it depends a little bit again on the how you how you want to organize an initiative like this. If the challenge might be, and I've experienced this myself, that then a new way of working, which initially was like, let's go to new offices that we can use more, flexible. All of a sudden, they realize, like, whoa, this is actually like a enormous transformative, project. And then it can become bigger than what we say Ben Hur, right? And then the cost starts to accumulate. And so I've programs that the question then is like, okay, who owns what? In what part of this is, sits within the business? I would say the business should own it. It's their work processes. That's what they, do on a daily basis. You can then, as a step in between, you can see in your program and your initiative towards a new way of working, do we offer support? So do we have like a business process redesign analyst or person who we can, hand out to the business to help, make sense of it? Then with the business, of course, it's like, are you looking for some low-hanging fruit? Like, there are some small pieces of a process that you can change, or are you sincerely looking at, a redesign of the process? And of course, then it becomes a much larger thing, and then you have to look at time again as well, because some of that you can't change in 6 or 12 months. It might take you 2 or 3 years. But generally, I would say business owns.
Yeah, and I guess where the challenge a lot of this is, right? It's a lot easier for people to visualize and ask the question, what is our people strategy for the next 5 years? What is our real estate strategy for the next 5 years? To ask the same question, what is our process strategy the next 5 years? Just seems one, a really weird question, really important question, and obviously we know the sort of the relationship that all plays together, but I'm not sure how many businesses actually ask themselves that question.
Yeah, and some do. So
Mm.
sometimes it's also combining initiatives that are already happening and finding again that sort of momentum. Like, we've been, discussing that already for 2 years.
Mm.
Actually, now, if with a new way of working, it totally makes sense that we start doing it. Because it's often seen as primarily as a cost thing, right? They can't really see straight away, how it will benefit them. But I think now is also a momentum to go back to the drawing table, because in the past 12 months, a lot has potentially changed. We might not want to see it. We might not be ready to see it. We might still lean towards like, oh, let's go back to normal. But clients' expectations and their experience might have changed. So I think you have to start there again, and not just because internally we have to do it yes or no, and it becomes, before you know, something you get stuck in because who's the decision maker here. But if you do it from an external point of view and you look at, hey, this is what is changing for clients, or this is how we want to, create a different client experience in the next few years now, then that automatically leads to, we have to change some of our processes. But I hear you. You can't. It's a big thing. You can't do it all. Just in one go.
So how important is it then for organizations to really define their process?
Less important than it maybe used to be.
Mm.
I think what is more important is to define the direction, the mission, and with laying out the whole landscape and the whole process. Then I would say, like, hey, we've learned already a few things in the past few years, even pre-pandemic, and the pandemic has now stressed it even more. There are things that you can start doing in a more agile way and that you can test and learn. And so let that really happen, and make failure part of business. And you can't fail on your mission, so that's why your mission needs to be fully clear. But you can fail on a daily basis, by things that you're testing out, that you're learning from. Otherwise, you're not making that progress. And then there are, I believe, give that ownership to the business, to the teams. It's almost back to, history is repeating, like what Toyota did, back in the days. Like, empower your people. If the mistakes are being made, it doesn't take, weeks or months sometimes, to go back up to the leadership team, and then, to decide, and then it has to filter back down, like, what do we do with it? No, make it closer to the production line, make it closer to the people who are dealing with these. Because if you start talking about it, I'm often amazed that people in teams go like, but yeah, but in our team we do it this and this way. It totally doesn't make sense, but yeah, that's just how we do it. And it's like, okay, so what and why is that, and where does it sit stuck, and what could you potentially do, about it?
Mm.
But people often don't feel ownership of it, and they feel like, yeah, that's just how this organization, is structured, and the systems that I have to deal with, and so just tell me my little task, and then I'll keep doing it, and so we do it almost, blindfold.
Yeah, no, no, I'm giggling because I can totally relate, and I'm sure anyone else watching can totally relate too. But whenever you say tie back to mission, what do you mean whenever you say tie back to the mission? What is that mission? Is that mission of the organization or something else?
It should always be tied into the mission and the strategy of the organization. But if we want to move towards a new way of working, it should have a very strong mission or storytelling behind it. And you don't have to, that's what I've learned in the past 5-6 months working with clients. And I was there, trying to spell that out in a perfect way. Like, okay, that's the vision. And then these are the guiding principles. And then we try, like, some of that, like, okay, that's the 80-20 rule. Like, this is good enough. Let's start validating some of this with the business, or let's start looking for what can we prototype, what can we pilot, and then let's learn from it, and then let's go back, because without a doubt, and things are evolving, right? We like to have certainty. Steve, I don't know in the next 12 to 18 months where, what out of the pandemic, let's fingers crossed, let's hope, what that actually means and what that is going to look like. But if we don't start to have a clear story and an initial vision, and then start testing and allowing ourselves to, fail on a daily basis, and to learn, then we won't really change. Then I fear a little bit that in 12 months' time, that some organizations go like, you know what, we actually were a little bit passive, and now this is where we stand, and I think we can just open the doors again and let's go back to, normal. um, I don't think you have that luxury. I don't think, so that is, I think, something that organizations feel they shouldn't do. But more and more, and now with the vaccines, and and there's hope, and that can lean towards the ones that really, become stronger and emerge, in a better way out of this very disruptive times. And I think there are the ones that actually realize that they just sat through it and haven't used it as a momentum to really change anything. Um, I don't know. I'm not going to predict you. I'm not a futurologist, who will be the winners, but I've got a gut feel about it. Let's put it that way.
So, I mean, you say that you wouldn't recommend those people sitting still, opening the doors, and just bringing everyone back as it was pre-pandemic. Why do you say that?
But because I think it's unnecessary, and that's where, then back to, my passion. I truly think, about you, me, myself, about, my daughters growing up, the way that we work in our personal well-being. There is just, we can do things differently. Sometimes last year, even before the pandemic, I was working with a financial institution here in Manhattan, and just the sheer fact that with some people, we started to open up more flexibility pre-pandemic, and people said like, I don't know. I don't know why I did it, but year in, year out, I traveled and commuted into the city 1.5 hours, or sometimes 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. And so you're telling me now I could work from home 1 or 2 days a week? And then they came back and they were like, this is like amazing. And it blew me away. Like, how what happened that this is like seen as abnormal? And so I really care about, inclusion and diversity. I really care about well-being. If we don't run our businesses in a more sustainable way, so I almost don't care, Steve, in that sense, about how businesses are performing, but I do care about how people are performing and how they feel that they can live, a sustainable life. So even just for that sake, I would say it's a huge missed opportunity from a societal perspective. That the business can benefit from it, no doubt about it. But to me, that's almost like nice. That's a nice thing. But a lot of leaders focus on that as the first thing. And so it's just, again, it's a little bit of a, you know, through what eyes are you looking at this momentum and this, these disruptive times? What is the intent? What is the legacy that you really want to leave behind? Start to ask those questions, because people, people feel that, people see that, then they start to understand the story, and they start to buy into the story, and they start to build. Um,
You're breaking up there a little bit, look. But I just want to sort of, I'd love to come back and clarify and sort of ask the question, because obviously it's a big statement. You don't really think about the business performance; you think about the people performance. Can you hear me again, look? Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
lost
you
you
can. Okay,
for
good.
10 seconds.
Yeah, no, I don't know what it is. But so sort of my question was, I wanted to go back and just clarify on that, because you said, you don't necessarily care about business performance, you care more about the people performance. So I just want to sort of like, 'cause that's a big statement. Is that because the people performance therefore will actually then just flow into the business performance by looking after one, you look after the other?
I personally have no doubt that that is the case.
Yeah,
But it takes a little bit of guts, and it takes there's a huge trust element there. But generally, like, Steve, we both grew up as a little kid. We learned things. We didn't even know how to drink or even how to walk, and we figured it out. And people make big decisions on mortgage or things, so we treat each other as adults. I would say is definitely the starting point behind this. But with business performance, yeah, of course, we need to also have hygiene in place. We need to have the right metrics. We need to have the right, even for my organization, we, as you know, a global consulting firm with about 50 people. Last year, it's like a little bit the shoemaker in his own shoes, right? We realized that in our performance management, we primarily have done it on lagging indicators and not on leading indicators. And the lagging indicators were primarily financial. And so we care, and we think we care about people, and that we are a very human centric organization. But we realized we're not measuring it. So how do we actually, know? So we started to relook at our own KPIs, because yes, again, it's not important, Steve. You still have those. You need to have those things in place, so that we can hold ourselves accountable. But those KPIs, again, they need to match with that, mission, and not just financial KPIs. And of course, we know that employee engagement and other things and well-being has been more in the picture over the past 12 months. Well, let's keep it there.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a tough thing to balance, and it really is the chicken and the egg, right? And it's a tough thing. I think CEOs to sort of not take one without the other, and I think we have to acknowledge, right? There is a lot more focus on people during this time. The sort of the feeling, the emotional connections, and so on and so forth. We have to acknowledge that is sort of being a lot more transparent within organizations. And I also think, we talk about process, we talk about transparency. We do see a lot of information in the media these days about organizations making decisions so that they can actually provide guidance to employees about how their processes are going to work in the future. I often go back to Spotify, where there was a lot of media attention that Spotify, they're all going to remote. They're not going to work. They're not going to work in an office anymore. Spotify never said that they're not going to be in the office. What they did, they make the decision, though, to allow themselves to provide flexibility to employees, but also to then think through their processes. How are we going to operate in this way going forward? What is the technology we need to provide? How are we going to communicate? There's no doubt about it. The remote companies and how they define processes and illustrate their processes, there's lessons to be learned there. And sort of as we sort of try and wrap this up, I mean, I think that's one of the key things that we can really take away from a lot of those remote based companies. How do we make those processes transparent? I mean, so visual that actually you can go and search index, how do I do this when I do that? And there's, I mean, GitLab's the one that everyone goes to, where you can go and employee handbook, where it is step by step. When you're doing this process, this is how you do it. This is who you communicate it. This is how you communicate it. If that doesn't work, then do this. So as you think about processes and we think about these things, how are you thinking about that, and what guidance would you provide?
Yeah, no, I think that's talking about Spotify. That's spot on. You have to think through um, those processes without any doubts there. I just want to very quickly, before I respond to that, one thing. I feel hesitant personally when organizations say we go fully remotely. I think it might be doable, but what I feel is under pressure is the diversity and inclusion. And the reason for that is with the offices, it was relatively easier to create equal circumstances, right? Yeah, of
Mm.
course, I know in the hierarchy of organizations, it was not always equitable. But with working from home, it depends strongly on four things, right? It's your occupation, so sort of the job role, and it is the fashion that you're in, it's the spaces that you have at home, and then it's your personality, your own traits. And so I think we need to offer choice there. It won't be, there's such a wide variety of, if you think about these four elements of what people are, operating in, that I'm tempted to say, well, good luck for the ones that go, just fully remote. Not necessarily sure that is, the smartest way. But yeah, then you for sure you have to reevaluate all the different things that you do, and the processes in place. Um, I mean, I'm not an expert myself in analyzing processes. There are, fantastic people out there. Um, but yeah, I think in conclusion, how can you do without it?
Yeah.
I don't.
And that's sort of where I sort of wanted to sort of touch on this with you, because I think, no matter what way we work in going forward, whether you're office based, whether you're going to work hybrid, whether you're going to work remote, whatever that is, I think organizations need to really sort of look at what is the best process for employees, no matter where they work, how they work, to be able to perform their tasks. And I think the point you raised about that equitable equality, right? The equality you talk about, where they work and how they work, and make sure that that's all covered and provided to by the organizations. I think that's a big thing, a good thing as well. So as we wrap up here, look, any last thoughts that you want to share?
Hey, there's hope. Let's
There's
spring
always
come.
hope. Look, there's always hope.
There's always hope. No, it's exciting times actually. I see there's a lot happening in the market. There's like we just said, December, January were really downtime, and I think we all needed that. And since February, things are picking up. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this year, and how we can be still compassionate, for the whole situation that we're in, and hopefully the pandemic will have helped us to, you know, become a little bit more human again as well. So let's use that momentum.
Fantastic, great final words there. Look, thank you. I appreciate you as always, sharing your thoughts, your ideas, your time. Thank you, and folks, for those who did watch all the way through, thank you. Do check out the links below where you can connect with Luc. Do check out opensourceworkplace.com, and thank you for watching.